Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin, and this is a show where you can have your property related questions answered by a team of property experts. And joining me today is Sara Newson, founder of Realm 47, property development and investment experts. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me back.
Nice to see you. And I think for your second show, we have Glenn Jacobs, MD of Next Home, London Estate Agents. Welcome to you.
Thanks for having me again.
Good. We obviously didn't put you off last time.
No.
Good.
Not quite.
Great stuff. We'll try and be kinder this week. Okay, Sara, what is the panel's view on the new planning descriptive of grey belt areas, and will this really help house building numbers?
Yes.
Yes, it will, or no, it won't. I've got a feeling what's coming next.
Yeah, I'm not 100% confident about it, and the reason being is the other specifics that they brought in. So it's in theory a good idea, okay? So grey belt is green belt that they're going to reform and say it's less desirable green belt land. That's what ultimately this grey belt land is. So potentially scrubland, potentially car parks that were on green belt land that they can then repurpose and reuse. So slightly unsightly land. Understand the car park bit. The scrubland bit, again, there's the argument that that's nature land and there's things going on there. So
organic growth, isn't it?
Yeah. Is it right to be building there? Besides that, I do think that we obviously need more housing, and I think potentially it is a way to help solve the issue. The problem comes when you start looking at the specifics, and what the government have said is that they want to have 50% affordable on those developments, affordable housing on those developments. And it comes back to my age-old thing of, that is all great and it's a dream, perhaps, but somebody's got to build this. Somebody's got to make this development viable and profitable to the point where they can pay themselves and everybody gets paid. Nobody can do this at make a loss. So they're going to have to really think. If they insist on this 50% affordable, they're going to have to make sure that there's financial support and provisions in place to ensure this happens, or do it themselves. The government will need to do it themselves. I also think that there's plenty, and I've said this before, there's plenty of opportunity within certain cities to create more housing. Plenty of opportunity and space without them necessarily going to this yet.
Yes, I mean, an intrusion into nice green areas isn't going to be welcomed by anybody.
No,
I don't think. I think I tend to agree with you that I think if what you're saying is what I understand, it really needs a rethink of these designations. Even the reference to affordable homes and social homes, there is a great difference. I mean, an affordable home, I think is it 80% now of market value. Social homes are significantly less in value, and also the different types of construction that are needed for those different categories of building. I mean, it's not all just one size fits all. So there are cost implications, profit implications, aesthetic implications. So it's not an easy subject, and I think even if this government at its current rate of knots of making changes tries, if they go too quick, they're going to mess up with this.
Yeah, you hit a great spot there with the actual look and the aesthetics of these buildings. If they're going to be knocking them up really quickly and at a price point, then what are they going to look like? And they're on the edges of Greenbelt or in Greenbelt, they need to look appealing. We used to build beautiful houses, so let's continue that instead of...
You can get into the social arguments, and I don't. I wouldn't want to restrict anybody from owning their home, whether they own it or rent it, or being proud of their home, or just using it as a temporary place because they've been allocated to work there, or whatever else. But you've got to look at the practicalities of life. And for instance, I look around in the City of London, and I'm so proud of some of the architecture in there. And I'm thinking, great, that's my generation leaving something really cool, behind. Now, would you want to put a council estate in the middle of it? Now you can say, oh, that's terribly antisocial to say that kind of thing. But it's not actually, because the type of shops and facilities that are in, say, the centre of the City of London are not going to be the kind of shops that are going to be any use to those that are living on a council estate.
Yeah.
You know,
Great point,
they're luxury shops, they're, you know, non-essential
Non-essentials,
shops.
yeah.
So I think the trouble is we've got so frightened of having these sensible discussions because of the social implications of what the conversation might mean, that I think we go backwards to a degree.
100%.
So I think, you know, we just need a whole look at the thing. I was the same with, we've spoken about this before, Sara, with leases for rental property. I've just said this many times on the programme. I've even seen here in some of the skyscrapers that we've got here, cut and pasted leases. You must have seen it, Glenn. You know, 50-storey block. You shall clean your chimney every 3 months
100%.
and keep the lawn mowed. Yeah, lovely. I wish I had that.
Windows are a thing that always gets cut and pasted into it. Clean the external of a window on the 40th floor. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, I'm 40 floors up. I just wonder if I hang out the window with a long stick, I might be able to do it. Yeah. But no, I think it really is time for a sort of root and branch change in our categories, our attitude to property, rather than just live in the past.
Yeah, completely agree.
You're an agent. Come on, what do you think?
No, totally. I mean, I think, yeah, it would be nice to look at a demographic of an area and adapt to that demographic, i.e. if there's a certain number of people, rather than try and change it basically. And what in certain areas where I operate, Leighton has been changed beyond where my office is based, beyond the realms of possibility basically. So you've got, whereas 11 years ago when I first started where I was, it was mainly tenants around that sort of area and low earning families, nice community driven area. Now we've got an influx of, which is for better or for worse, Hackney, Shoreditch, Stoke Newington, all those sort of areas. See Leighton, better transport links and are moving there.
It's all very trendy now, isn't it?
Very trendy. But where have you got the low earning families, and the amount of heartbreaking conversations I have to have with those families that can't afford their house anymore.
But again, you know, going to the other extreme is when we have these new towns that are created. It's no good building a new town with nearly all social or low-cost housing, because the people on those estates aren't going to have the money to use for transport to get into the main cities or the shopping hubs. I mean, you've got to be so careful with this stuff. And I think if the government try and solve it too quickly, much as I'd like them to, I think we're going to end up in real trouble.
They're just going to create new problems that they'll have to solve. Yeah.
Different set of problems.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Glenn, would it be an idea that estate agents are licensed to operate in specific postcodes only? This might ensure a higher standard of area knowledge and expertise, benefiting both the vendor and the applicant.
I think that's a great point. And I think if you are an estate agent without experience in certain postcodes and whatnot, you don't know the different legislations on licences. We had one incident recently where a property's been redecorated in Hackney to a certain HMO spec. In Hackney, the HMO licences are different regulations and legislations to Leighton, which is neighbouring areas. So the landlord spent all this money here, was advised by an agent to do this upon purchase. The agent's incorrectly advised, and then they didn't need half of the bits and pieces that have been put into this property for the licence in there. Whereas if it is in Leighton, they would have been within the regulations there. So I do think on that side of things, it would save certain clients money, time. And yeah, I think unless you are going to look into each individual property as an individual property and look at what the licensing dictates there, as a good agent should, I think it would be beneficial. Yeah.
I think when I first started learning about agency and some of the intricacies of being a good agent, I was told, just think of yourself as a vendor, and if you see a property that's on the market with an agent that's way out of area, there's two reasons for it. One is that no local agent will take it on because you're asking too much for it, so you'll be paying too much if you buy it. And the other thing is, the other extreme is that have a look at it, because it might be just through a family contact or a friend that they've appointed that agent. They don't know the area. So to get a quick sale and get it out of the way, it's probably been undervalued. Yeah. So there's two extremes, but look for both.
Yeah.
Does that still work?
100%. When I try and tout for new properties and whatnot, I'll always look at the agent who's marketing that property. And if it is an out of area agent, then I will make a beeline for that property because I've got expertise in this area. I've got the client network in this area. A few years ago when I first started, it was slightly different. You had a lot of walk-ins. It's not as much like that anymore in terms of a lot of it is internet based, but you do still have your bank of local people that do still only look in that postcode. So that's the difference back then to now. But yeah, I do make a beeline for those properties that are marketed by out of area agents.
All right, thank you for that, Glenn. Okay, that's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break when I'll be asking Sara and Glenn more of your questions. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm joined by Sara Newson and Glenn Jacobs. Welcome back. Sara, although the new government have disowned the term levelling up, does the panel think there will be genuine efforts by government to stimulate employment, provision of homes and wealth creation in the northern parts of the country?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. I think this is what they stand for, isn't it?
I hope so.
Yeah, making sure that, the working people of the country are supported as well as possible. So creating more jobs is definitely going to be something on the agenda. And I don't think they're, sort of just going to be solely focused on London and the south. I think they will definitely take the north into account.
Shocking.
I know. So yes, absolutely. I do have confidence in them. I have a lot of concerns and they're never going to get it right. But I do have confidence that they are going to do well in terms of job creation and, employment and potentially housing.
I was a bit torn this morning listening to the news because one of the new ministers it wasn't as strong as we're going to, but the implication was that they might, and that was to relook at HS2. To see if it would go across the country at the top there, because they're saying if it goes to Birmingham, the links between Birmingham and Manchester and onward are so bad now that it would never cope with a number of people. Already the trains are too long for the stations and things like that. So they said they've got to have a look at it again. The only trouble with that I have is that for the last 5 years, I've just wished they'd have torn HS2 up and never even started it, because the costs have just gone crazy. I mean, it started off at 25 billion and it ended up at 150 billion, didn't it? I mean,
it's frightening.
I just don't know.
We needed to spend more money, didn't we?
Well, yeah. I mean, I get the jobs bit, I get the contracting bit, I get getting the economy going on infrastructure projects, but it's also got to be controlled. You've got to have the people there that can control it, and clearly a government doesn't have that expertise, does it?
No, but HS2, they've already put in a lot of the legwork, so potentially it might be something that they can pick up effectively, but we'll see.
Even though it is going to stop like 10 miles outside of London.
Well,
that's
the bit
you have to get the bus in.
I'm hoping they might, add to that bit as well.
So the outskirts will benefit in terms of value, but apart from that.
Well, they've already pulled half of Euston apart, haven't they? sort of to do it. Anyway, I'm right. Well, there we are. So you're quite confident then about your northern future?
I am, yes.
Good.
Quietly confident, yes. But I don't think it's going to be smooth. I think it's going to be rough. I think they're going to make mistakes, big mistakes, just from their history, previous experience of having a Labour government.
I think the other thing is, although London says, people always say, London gets everything and it gets all the grants and gets all the help and whatnot. I'm not sure that's actually that true, really, is it? We've got TfL that are in money trouble running the underground. I mean, if you ever got a forced market, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Trains down here are not good. No, I've always found that in the Midlands and the North, the trains are better up there than down here. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's a lack of capacity to run them properly, whether it's this split management business of, one company runs the lines, one company runs the actual trains themselves, another company does the catering, another company does the stations.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's half the
That's
trouble.
something to do with it.
Yeah, it's all
Potentially.
compartmentalised, isn't it? It's, the right hand don't know what the left hand's doing a lot of
I mean,
time.
you're in East London. I mean, here in Canary Wharf, we're very lucky. We've got the DLR, Docklands Light Railway. We've got the Jubilee Line, which is a very new and modern underground service. We've now got the Elizabeth Line, which takes you from Canary Wharf to Heathrow in probably 40 minutes direct, just across the road there. You're further out in East London, Leighton and that sort of area. What's your transport like out there?
Generally, I mean, Stratford's
of course,
by far one of the best hubs for transport you can find.
Isn't it?
But as well as that, dotted all around, basically, you've got Central Line Overground all the way across, bus routes. You don't actually have to drive, really, where we are, which makes the parking permits hell of a lot more expensive around that way.
Well, I bought my car new 2 years ago, and I've just done 1,500 miles.
That's exactly it.
So,
however, on the flip side, parking permits, we pay £900 per parking permit. It's fortunes to park. They're trying to restrict a lot of the through roads or the side roads. They're putting these bollards up. It does seem like they're trying to disincentivise driving and then get everybody onto public transport. But when sometimes public transport fails, bicycles, yeah. Well, with sort of HMOs that we've refurbished and whatnot, they make a stipulation that we have to have bike racks there to facilitate for the members in the houses. Which, I mean, it's another expense, but
well, there you are. It's also optimistic down here. Sorry, you'll have to sell up in York and get your business going down here, won't you?
Yeah, you never know.
Right, okay.
I might be down soon.
Thank you for that. Glenn, what are the criteria for recommending that a vendor sells through a conventional agency or by way of auction?
I think now more than ever, it's so important that you instruct a good agent or auctioneer to sell your property in a market such as this. Years gone by, you could have just put it up with an online agent and it sells itself. Whereas now, where interest rates are sky high, there's a lot more red tape in regards to the property, the lenders and the property criteria. I think now you need to have an idea of what an estate agent has done, whether he's dealt with your style of property, what he's done in the past, if he's got a good understanding or they've got a good understanding of how conveyancing works, basically, and advise you adaptly how a good marketing plan could increase the value of your property rather than leaving it stagnate and look like a dead duck, basically. And that goes for both sides of things. We've got an auction company that we run, we've got an estate agency that we run, and we adapt each property and advise on that basis. It's not one cut shop, basically.
Okay, two questions there. One, I mean, in the past, it's always been a sort of mental thought that you know, if something's in an auction, there's probably something wrong with it, and that's why it's gone to auction. I think that's gone now, hasn't it? That sort of ethos. And secondly, how many of these auctions now, particularly in property, are physical auctions where people attend, or how many are online? What's the sort of split?
Very few. Ours is solely an online based, and with that, there's positives because you can bid on it from anywhere, but also there's also that negative side where generally when you're in the room and feeling that sort of buzz and competition of the psychology behind it, you tend to drive up the price a bit more sometimes. However, when you're home bidding on a property, you can do your due diligence whilst you're bidding almost. You've got your computers there, you've already racked through the paperwork. In an auction, you can come unstuck in a physical auction because you get wrapped up in the emotion of it. Exactly that. Yeah. What we do sometimes is people will come to us and say, look, I need to sell my property. I'm in a bit of a situation. That does happen a lot more than your standard sales through that route. We advise adaptly. So if someone comes to us and said, well, we might have someone that might prevent you from going to auction that could purchase it on our books that we've got experience in dealing with, and we'll get a fair price that way. So we tailor each individual property on that basis.
Are there statistics which sort of give out the difference between the kind of prices achieved at auction and by agency sale within a certain area? Would you take a postcode and sort of say, well, look, you know, 50% of the properties here were auctioned and they only hit so much?
I think at the moment, there's not really a rule of thumb with that, because you've got a lot of landlords looking to sell properties on different leases and tenancies and whatnot, because the interest rates are so high. And that's what we're finding at the moment, where they're mortgage locked, they can't get out of the mortgage for 2 to 5 years or another year. They're in negative equity on the property, or they're getting negative equity with their rent. So the rents are less than what their mortgage is. So you don't really, as I say, have a rule of thumb of that's 20% less because you've got a tenant in there. It's kind of making it work for that landlord.
The reason I asked the question, I was just thinking in my mind, we referred to valuers earlier, and I'm just thinking, if valuers start getting hold of auction results and using them as comparables, we're just on a downward path, aren't we? Well,
we had a private discussion in regards to that. And what a lot of the time is happening is because of the HMO styles, and I'm actually selling properties off market and then posting it on as sold to show that, one, we're active in the market, but two, to set a precedent in how much that property is achieving. Because otherwise you're waiting for land registry and there's a backlog on that. Whereas your surveyors are going to look at comparable evidence, and we're posting proof of what this property's gone for as a sold item, because you wouldn't look at it if it's just on the market.
Yeah, it's a smart move, that, I think. Sara, anything to add to all that?
Yeah, I think for me it's just if somebody needs to sell very quickly, and if a property's quite severely distressed, as in it needs a lot of work, those are kind of the properties that you expect to be in an auction. I know you said that, auctions, it's not really the place for problem properties, but in certain parts of the country you will see problem properties still going to auction. It's structural issues, etc., that are going into auction.
But would that stop you putting a perfect property into auction?
No,
it wouldn't.
No, not at all. If you needed to sell quick, there's always, in my opinion, you're going to get more if you're on the open market, because the people going to auction, they have in mind, we've got to make this move quickly. We're probably going to have to buy this property and move within 6 weeks. We might be in a chain situation. So in my opinion, you're going to get, for a standard property that is a very saleable property, in my opinion, you're going to get more on the open market going to an agent.
And they will also, the people at auction will also have pre-approved finance, won't they? Well, in most cases.
Yes, yeah. So you've got to be, all organised, haven't you, ultimately?
I suppose that's your nightmare as an auction.
Well, I mean, a lot of fees have been lost by exchanging without pre-approved finance, but yeah.
Okay, well, there we are. That's the end of the show. So I'm going to say a big thank you to Sara Newson and Glenn Jacobs. Thank you both so much for coming in today. Really great stuff, really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Great, I'm Stephen Galpin. Join me again next time on Property Question Time. See you then.